Hello and welcome to the France 24 interview. I'm Eduardo Cué. As the United States prepares to withdraw most or even all of its troops from Afghanistan next year, the countries of the region, India, Iran, and most especially Pakistan, are jockeying for position in what is certain to become a new geopolitical configuration. Who will gain real influence over Afghanistan, and can the Taliban make a comeback once the Americans have left? Here with us today to discuss these issues is Didier Chaudet, a research fellow at the Paris-based Institute for Prospective and Security Studies in Europe. Welcome to France 24, Mr. Chaudet.
Thank you.
So after more than 10 years of war, thousands of dead and billions spent, the United States says it is withdrawing most of its troops, maybe all of them next year. The question is this a withdrawal or is this a retreat?
De facto, it will be seen as both from the point of view of Al-Qaeda and of its friends in Afghanistan. It will be seen as a retreat and as a victory for them. We cannot push that aside. It will be talked about time and again by the people who are supposed to be crushed by this invasion of Afghanistan. From the point of view of the US, I mean, it was pretty sure that for the Americans that to be delimited in times what they had to do in Afghanistan. Obama said it from the start to the people he was working with, but he was not about to stay there forever. He has other battles to win. He cannot stay only in Afghanistan.
But still, 10 years seems to be a terribly long time. It is now America's longest war in its history. And there is increasing talk that the Taliban could actually make a comeback, at least in the southern parts of the country. Do you think there's a real possibility that the Taliban may actually return to power, at least in part?
They could return in power in part of the country. I will not say the whole country. They will have to win over ethnic groups. They will have to be able to enter into discussions with other actors. But in the Pashtun-dominated area, they could be the first or at least the main force in power.
So isn't this really a defeat for the United States and its allies?
It is definitively a defeat from an Afghan point of view, for the Afghan people, because you were talking about the longest war for the Americans, but I will say, like other geopolitics like Gérard Chalian, for example, that they began the war only in 2008 or 2009. For the Bush administration, it was not a war that truly focused. They were They were focusing on Iraq. It's the Obama administration that understood that they cannot forget this war necessity just to focus on the war of choice that was Iraq.
And now, of course, there are talks between Washington and Kabul on trying to establish a partnership, a strategic partnership beyond 2014. But these talks are blocked to a large extent. Do you think that a partnership can be reached, or is there a real chance that the United States will simply leave?
I think it will be reached at the end of the day, because the American foreign policy is first and foremost a realist one. Of course, there will have some tensions if Karzai is staying in power, or if somebody close to Karzai is staying in power. But at the end of the day, what is important from an American point of view is the Afghan geography. It is too close to Iran, too close to Pakistan, too close to China, too close to Central Asia to be totally forgotten.
Washington, of course, is also, the relationship is not so great between Obama and Karzai, and Washington is threatening or indicating that it might make some sort of separate peace with the Taliban, as it did with the North Vietnamese at the end of the Vietnam War. Is that a real possibility, or are these just threats?
I think it's more bluff than anything else, because you need to be two to tango, and for now the Taliban do not seem very keen to dance any tango with the US. They play with them, they say that they are okay to talk with them the same way. They will say over time that they will be okay to talk, not with Karzai, but maybe with an Afghan administration. But at the end of the day, what they want is total control, and the Americans will never give them that, of course.
But will the Americans have a choice? I mean, if they're no longer there, they may not have a choice.
What will happen is that over time the Americans will talk with any actor which is not seen as directly linked to Al-Qaeda or to jihadists who want to target directly the West. It means that they can talk to a pretty big range of actors, because it suffices to say that some Taliban will be more than happy to say that we are not working with the Taliban anymore, to see maybe part of the American establishment saying why not talking with them. It will be a mistake, of course, a mistake that the Pakistanis have done before when they were trying to stabilize the tribal areas a few years back.
With Pakistan, of course, is the country that is most directly concerned with the future of Afghanistan. And they have been playing this double game of saying that they are allies of the United States while at the same time really supporting the jihadists. But there seem to be some second thoughts now within the Pakistani government and maybe even the military that the support for the Taliban could eventually turn against Afghanistan, against Pakistan. Do you see that as a possibility?
Definitively. First and foremost, we need to accept the reality of the region. It was said to me by a high military ISI official a few years back when I was in Pakistan, when he told me that there are only idiots who are not playing a double game. Everybody is playing a double game, even the Russians are talking to the Taliban. Of course, the Pakistanis, because of their special connection with Afghanistan, especially through the Pashtun population, they had to be able to talk with everybody. And interestingly enough, they have done this double game, this so-called double game, because it has been seen that the Americans will not do the work that had to be done in Afghanistan. But to come back to your question, indeed, you had a lot of military men who have been suffering in Fatah, who have been fighting, losing limbs or losing lives, losing friends. The Pakistani population has suffered a lot of a war on terror that they didn't see as their own. So indeed, now the situation is not the same as it was in the 1990s, when it was seen like acceptable to play with some jihadists, to have some control in Afghanistan and to control and to fight against India. Now the idea is to protect Pakistani lives first. So if it means fight against the Taliban, they will do so.
But Pakistan has always looked upon the Taliban as their best insurance against India and Indian influence in Afghanistan. What do you see of India's role? Karzai has made relations with India quite close.
Mm-hmm. I will say that the Pakistanis have contact with some Taliban, but it doesn't mean that they control them, and they are not the only one having contacts with Taliban. Now we see the Iranians also having contact, and in fact, even the Americans try to have contact with the Taliban. So now everybody try to have some impact on them, but at the end of the day, they are pretty independent. The thing is indeed how big an impact the Indian-Pakistani tension will have on Afghanistan. It will, in a big part, depend on India, what they want to do in the region. Do they want to use Afghanistan as a way to force peace in a way at a regional level, or will they enter in a classic, realist, zero-sum game when they win, and it means that the Pakistanis are losing?
Do you know what they might do? Do you have an opinion about what
Unfortunately, I think that the tensions between Pakistanis and Indians are too strong, that they will never trust each other totally. You will have some goodwill actors in the two sides. In India and in Pakistan, you have a lot of people who want peace, even at the level of at the level of the elites. But at the end of the day, you have also people in the two sides who do not trust each other and who will use any opportunity possible to belittle the other.
Then there is the question of Iran, of course. Mm-hmm. Iran is, I don't know if the word is too strong, but hates the Taliban. And Iran has very, very strong commercial relations with Afghanistan. I just want to cite a figure for you. The trade between the two countries has gone from $50 million in 2006 to $2.2 billion last year. So what role do you see for Iran here? And has the Obama administration made a mistake in not wanting to engage Iran in talking about Afghanistan?
I think that we could easily say that the American attitude toward Iran has been the biggest mistake of the war against terrorism since 2001. The Iranians showed that they had in fact the same enemy as the Americans and the Europeans, the Sunni extremists. They have the same problem inside their own country with Jundullah, with other groups like Arakat Islam, and they try to fight against them as much as possible. The Iranians have also been the one suffering exactly like the Pakistanis the most about the drugs coming from Afghanistan, the insecurity coming from Afghanistan, the refugees, and at the end of the day, they were more than happy to help. We do know now that they were even eager to help on Iraq. Whatever we think about the regime itself, of course, I mean, we can find ways to criticize it. It's totally understandable. But at the end of the day, the Iranian regime is also pretty rational in its way it is dealing with its regional environment. It wants to survive, and it knows since the Iraq-Iran war that it cannot do otherwise than to talk with others.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chaudet. I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop there. Thank you so much for your analysis.
Thank you.
Here on the France 24 interview. And please stay tuned for more news here on France 24.